Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I am working on Autumn at Balmead. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just first show you a picture of the finished product on Diamond Art Club. Actually, I'll pull it up on my Gems Flow app. That might be quicker than waiting to go to the website. So I have all my diamond paintings that I have here, and it doesn't even look like I put this as working on it, so I'll just bring it up on here and I'll change it later. Sorry for that light, but there you have it. It's Autumn at Balmead. I'm going to bring the camera down and make this full screen for a minute. And I am just about at the horse's tail. Sorry for that light in there. So I am a little bit more than halfway done. So let me put this back on my boom arm and tell you what we're going to talk about today. We'll do a little bit of catch up as far as where I am today. My month is going okay for reading. It's not going great because I try to read 2 books a day, and I'm just bringing up my spreadsheet right now on my phone. I try to read 2 books a day, and if I read 2 books a day, with today being the 21st, I should be at book number 42. But I am on book number 35. So I'm at about 1.8 books a day for this month. The book I'm reading now is Of Manners and Murder by Anastasia Hastings. Now I had a little trouble looking her up because I think I counted 9 pseudonyms, and I wasn't able to so far determine which one is her actual name, or if all 9 or 10 of the other names she writes from, I don't know which of them are pseudonyms. And I guess I did read somewhere that when an author uses a pseudonym, it is to kind of divvy up their genres. Like, one pseudonym might be for historical fiction, another pseudonym might be for romance, another one might be for cozy mysteries, and I don't know if that's accurate, but that's kind of what I recently read. So meanwhile, I have been working on this diamond painting, and I am making fabulous progress with it. And while I'm working at on this diamond painting, when I sit at this drafting table, I have it like kitty corner to my desk. So as I'm facing the table here, over to my right on an L-shaped type thing is my desk. And I have my laptop on a boom arm, and I think I can actually show you my setup without showing me. Okay, so if I were to move my camera, see my windows open. There's my laptop right there. There's my lamp. That's my messy desk. Got things to do. And then I'm bringing it back over here. I haven't managed to show myself, which is great because I just have my robe on. Whoops, I've been up for a couple of hours, but I haven't gotten dressed for the day. Okay, I think we're back. So, while I am listening to books on Kindle text-to-speech, I am also swerving over to the right and jotting things down for the books that I have read in the past few days. So, or even if it's the book that I'm reading now, if there's a thought that I want to put down, I'm throwing it in my blogger. That's different than how I usually work, though. What I usually do is read 6, 7, 8 books, and then I take a few hours and write up a host of reviews. But what I'm trying to do now is finish up my September, which I finished up reading for September, but I haven't finished up writing for September. So what I usually do, like I said, is I read several books, and then I sit down and I write for a few hours, and I may make videos, and I just keep, plugging on like that without any notes, just working from my memory, glancing at Goodreads, like if I need a specific date or something like that, or a specific subgenre. But I'm trying to do a little bit advanced work while I'm listening to the books, and we're going to see if that will help me to get a good start on October. Now, as far as October is concerned, I think I've only read two October books. One for Blog Tour and one that my friend Fashawn recommended. The one my friend Fashawn recommended, the one that Fashawn recommended is a February book, so I'm reading a book that comes out in February. That's called Of Manners and Murder. But my October book Did Not Finish by Nicola Marsh, and I only read that book or listened to that book yesterday because my granddaughter's Kindle was charging, and I gave her my Kindle Fire to use while I was charging her Kindle. And so I just grabbed the next NetGalley shelf audiobook I had. Now, to explain that, when you get approved for an audiobook on NetGalley, you have to use their NetGalley shelf app to listen to it. So currently I only have 2 books on that app that I can listen to. One is The Couple at number 9, and I don't know that I can recall that author's name. And then also Did Not Finish by Nicola Marsh. And one book was 12 hours, the other one was 6. So I thought, okay, well, Lila's only going to have my Kindle for a little while. I'll just go ahead and listen to Nicola Marsh's book. And that's what I did. And I finished it, and I've got that review written. And now I'm back to listening to reading. Which one did I say I was reading? Of Manners and Murder, which, like I said, is by what did I say? Anastasia Hastings. So, other than that, I do have perhaps 5 or 6 videos that I made yesterday that need to be edited and the links and images created. So I will be doing that today. And then I think I have to make 3 or 4 videos for the books that I got in the last couple of days. So just very, very busy when it comes to my reading. Now, as far as this diamond painting is concerned, I joined the Great Escape Challenge by Rebecca and Mickey Crafting and Crime Daily and Mickey Sunshine. Mickey Sunshine Creates. And I finished my painting, which was Hawaiian Life. I finished that in about 9 days. So meanwhile, I found out around the 9th or the 10th that there's another event called Check Along Number 6 that I wasn't aware of. And so I joined that with this painting here, Autumn at Belmead. And I believe this check along goes to the end of September. So I decided, okay, yeah, I'll join it. But then it dawned on me just yesterday that why don't I make this painting number 2 for The Great Escape? Because I just may be able to get this done before the end of September. So that would mean that this diamond painting could work for 2 events. The Great Escape, and then Drills and Check Along Number 6. Wait, let me get that. Oh, this works for 3 challenges. Okay, this works for Drills and Chills, for a fall picture. It works for Great Escape, and it also works for Check Along Number 6. Oh my goodness, I just realized that. So one diamond painting nets me 3 different challenges. I just realized that. I'm thinking that it was only 2. So that's exciting. Now, I try to talk about mental health about once a month or so, not on a consistent basis. And before I go on, I have mentioned that my WIP and chats and my discussions are not going to be scheduled, because every time I schedule something, I fall off the wagon. They're just going to be spurious, or should I say random. Not spurious, but random. So I thought of a discussion that I'd like to have about guilt. And what happens now, our subconscious mind, we have no control over. But we do have amazing thought process for things that we can control. And one thing that is bothering me, and I'm bringing up 2 tablets. I'm bringing up my Samsung Galaxy tablet, and I'm also bringing up my iPad for jw.org. And what I wanted to talk about was guilt. Now, if you follow me on this channel, you'll know one thing about me is I don't use notes. I speak off the top of my head. Sorry, I hit the camera. I speak off the top of my head. So, although I have these 2 pages open on these 2 devices, I haven't read word 1 on either. So I thought I would just talk about them with you guys and hope that we can have an interchange and you can give me your perspective on guilt. So, let's talk about guilt. We all know what the word means, but we're going to just break it down. It says here on psychologytoday.com, guilt is aversive and, like shame, embarrassment, or pride, has been described as a self-conscious emotion involving reflection on oneself. People may feel guilt for a variety of reasons, including acts that they have committed or think they have committed, a failure to do something they should have done, or thoughts that they think are morally wrong. Okay, now remember, I don't have notes. I'm just flipping through this article. And like I had mentioned, we don't have control over our subconscious minds. We only have control over the actions that result from the things that we think about in the process of carrying out a thought. So that is my thought on how I came across this issue of guilt. Okay. Now, I have no professional anything when it comes to this discussion. These are just thoughts that I'm having based on something that I may expound on a little bit more. But let's talk more about what is guilt and coping with guilt. Now, I want to do it from a worldly perspective, like from Psychology Today, but also from a theocratic or Bible-based perspective. On a logical, worldly, medical, psychologically based opinion or fact, it says, what is guilt? When one causes harm to another, guilt is a natural emotional response. Guilt is self-focused but also highly socially relevant. It's thought to serve important interpersonal functions, by example, encouraging the repair of valuable relationships and discouraging acts that could damage them. But in excess, guilt may needlessly burden those who experience it. I love that definition. Now, I'm going to segue over to something from jw.org, and it's very, very similar, but I just want to read it from a different perspective. This is from an article called Feelings of Guilt, Are They Always Bad? It's a Bible viewpoint article, but I don't know quite the date of this article, but it's on jw.org. So it says, many people today view guilt feelings as undesirable. They feel the way the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche did. And I just read From Nietzsche to Narwhal. I just read that book like 2 weeks ago. That is hilarious. They feel the way German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche did, who said, guilt is the most terrible sickness that has ever raged in man. But for some researchers are now coming to a different conclusion. Guilt is an essential part of being a feeling responsible person. says Susan Forward, PhD, an internationally recognized therapist and author. It is a tool of the conscience. So then, are all feelings of guilt bad? Are there any circumstances where guilt might be helpful? So I love that the faithful slave at jw.org matches the professional opinion from Psychology Today. I'm sorry, my tablet shut off. Just trying to turn it back on. Sorry for my arm being there. But what I love about this, and this is something I needed to know for myself, it says that guilt is part of being a feeling responsible person, and it is a tool of the conscience. And then flipping back over to Psychology Today, there's a box here that says, can guilt be helpful? It says, given how uncomfortable guilt can feel, it can provide a strong motivation to apologize, correct, or make up for a wrong, and behave responsibly. And it says, since doing so helps to preserve social bonds and avoid harm to others, guilt, despite being a negative feeling, can sometimes be good. Research suggests that guilt proneness may be related to empathy as well as trustworthiness. I love that I looked this up. And now I'm going to give you the benefit of some of my experience with regard to this. Why did the question of what is guilt come up, and why am I using my thoughts about guilt as a segue into talking about my mental health on this channel? Well, I have 6 children, and one thing that I have always had in me is a very empathic or empathetic nature. In fact, maybe I'll look up empath and discuss that on a future video, but I always felt that I am an empath. I feel a very, very, very strong affinity to other people's emotions, and no, I don't know the literal meaning of the word empath, but I've always felt that I have a very, very, very strong connection to how other people feel. Well, as a mother to 6 adult children, 4 in their 30s and 2 in their 20s, the one thing that I want right now, if it were in my complete control, is to have a good, healthy relationship with all 6 of them. I don't want to have that prodigal son that the Bible talks about, how he was estranged from his family and then he had to come back and everything had to be repaired, and the father was so happy to have him back he laid out a huge feast. I don't want to be in that position that I have to celebrate bringing one of my children back to my fold. Now, I have had huge gaps of times with a couple of my kids where our communication has been suspended. I won't say canceled, but I'll say suspended. But I, as a mom, want a good relationship with all of them. But then I start to feel that it may not be as good as I think it is, or as good as I want it to be. And why? Well, because of guilt, feelings of guilt. And remember, the Psychology Today article said that guilt is also associated, I don't know why my tablet keeps shutting off. Guilt is also associated with shame, and it was another word. I don't know, but it's also associated with shame. And I have those feelings all of a sudden, to the point of tears, especially if I'm trying to rest. So I want to go on to jw.org and read a little bit more so that I can try to figure out why I'm so beset with these feelings of guilt. Here it says, what is guilt? A feeling of guilt is triggered when we realize that we have hurt someone we care about, or when we otherwise fall short of the standards we should live by. And as one reference work puts it, guilt relates to a sense of indebtedness because of a person's culpability for a failure, offense, crime, or sin. Now, as a mother, or as a human being even, I wish I could fix the past. I wish I could change the past. But we all know that hindsight is 20/20. And even though I can't do a single thing about the past, all of a sudden I am experiencing these feelings of guilt as my role as a mother. Mistakes that I made when my children were in their formative years, and now as they are all adults, one of them, Ariana, will be 30 in just a couple of years, so I will have 5 kids in their 30s. How can I get past feelings of guilt about the mistakes that I made as a mother while they were growing up, like I said, in their formative years? So the one thing that I did read is someone wants to apologize, correct, or make up for a wrong. Okay? So if I could go back and change some of the things that happened when my kids were growing up, and I'm not going to use specific examples because I'm not trying to call anybody out. The only person I want to call out is myself. Then I would go back and change very, very specific things and specific events in order to not feel any type of estrangement when it comes to my children. But I can't do that. I can't go back. I can't change. But can I apologize or make up for any wrongs that I have committed towards my kids when they were growing up? Well, the only child that I've spoken to about this is my oldest. And she made a good point. She goes, Mom, you did the best you could with what you had when you have, certain things went on. But the one thing she said is that you were never abusive. You were as good a mom as you could be with the cards you were dealt. And let me tell you, I needed to hear that from her. Let me just shut the light off because the sun just, boom. It just came from behind a cloud. And so I'm glad I spoke to her first because I had planned on touching base with every single one of my 6 adult children and apologize to things that I didn't do as good as I should have done. And Adriana is like, Mommy, you can apologize, but you don't have to apologize. Things are the way they are, and all we can do is do right now. That's all we can do. So for any of us here who haven't, there are things that, for example, let's just say, let me double check this symbol. Yeah, okay. Let's just say, and then I go and hit the camera with my head. I'm sorry. Let's just say that I robbed a store and I felt guilty about robbing a store at gunpoint, robbing a store owner at gunpoint. I may feel bad about it. I may want to go apologize for it. And I may even try to make my own reparations. But would that be enough? No. I would have to be prosecuted for my crime. So in that sense, guilt will come with punishment that is owed if I committed a crime and was successfully prosecuted and sentenced for that crime. But when there are events that happen that are out of our control, and I am just speaking from Robin, I'm not looking at any articles, I'm just talking about how I feel. When a person finds themselves considering things of the past that were due course, which were just natural life that we live in today's world, those are things that we don't have control over. Those are things that happen in the course of living everyday life that if we could change, we would, but we can't. So what does it say here in this daggone tablet that won't stay on? It says that we can behave responsibly or make up for a wrong. So I not only want a great relationship with my kids, but I want a great relationship with my grandkids. So what can I do now? Well, before we go on, let's give a couple of examples from the Bible, okay? It says, two scriptures that come up is Mark 3:29 and 1 Corinthians 11:27. And it speaks about how in the Hebrew scriptures, guilt was associated with an Israelite's failure to live up to God's law. And then in the Greek scriptures, the word is only mentioned twice in those two scriptures in Mark and 1 Corinthians. But then it talks about how we can feel guilty without being guilty. Okay? And it says if a person is a perfectionist and tends to set unreasonable standards for himself, each disappointment may trigger a feeling of undeserved guilt. And then jumping ahead to guilt feelings can be good. Feeling guilt can be good in at least 3 ways. First, it signals that we are aware of acceptable standards and it shows that we have a working conscience. Okay, that's great. That means that we are not, okay, let's just give a simple comparison to conscience. If a child does not know a stove is hot and they touch a stove, they will be burned, right? A hot stove will burn anybody. The next time that child goes near that stove, they know that that stove was hot, so they are trained to understand stove equals hot. So when it comes to having a Bible-trained conscience, guilt can sometimes remind us of things that happened in the past so that we don't repeat them in the future. That's my breakdown. Again, I'm not working with notes. That's just my thought. So let's go on. Second, a guilty conscience can help us to avoid undesirable actions. Just as physical pain alerts us to a potential health problem, the emotional pain associated with guilt alerts us to a moral or spiritual problem that needs our attention. So, once we are aware of the weakness, we are more inclined to avoid hurting others, our loved ones, or others again in the future. So the things that I feel guilt about in the past when my kids were growing up, I can try to avoid those very things in all of the relationships I have now. And those relationships include my adult children, my grandchildren, my husband, the friends in my congregation, the friends that I make online, and any other relationships that I forge every day for the rest of my life. I can use the mistakes of the past to assuage and to correct things that might happen in the future. And then, back to the article, finally, confessions of guilt can help both the guilty and the victim. Again, a Bible example, or my first Bible example. King David's guilt, for example, was accompanied by intense emotional agony, and his guilt was his sin with Bathsheba. Not only did he have an adulterous affair with Bathsheba, but he put her husband Uriah on the front. I'm not reading notes, I'm telling you this from my memory. He put her husband on the front line so that her husband would be killed. Well, this led David to have guilt, King David to have guilt. So, he says in Psalm 32:3 and 7, and again, I'm jumping between my thoughts and what I'm reading. So, I'm reading right now. But when he finally confessed, it says that, when I kept silent, my bones wore out through my groaning all day long, he wrote. But when he finally confessed his sin to God, David gladly sang out, with joyful cries at providing escape, you will surround me. So, confession can make the victim feel better because victims of guilt can assure the victim that the other person loves him and or her enough to regret causing so much pain. So, David felt guilt. His conscience was bothered. He called out and he confessed his sins to God, and then he was able to feel protection and able to work past that guilt. And that is the third reason. It can help both the guilty and the victim. But we have to have, I keep hitting the camera. You know what I'm hitting the camera with is this. That's what I'm hitting the camera with. So, how can we have a balanced view of guilt feelings? Guilt feelings come with shame and regret, but we shouldn't allow them to stumble us to the point where we find ourselves in a rut of regret and shame and recrimination and spending all of our waking hours wishing and trying to change what we could. We can use it to mold ourselves in the future to be a better person. And this is one thing that I said back when I had some issues in social media, is I am a work in progress. No matter what I learn, no matter what experiences I undergo, no matter who I talk to, no matter who I surround myself with, I'm going to make mistakes. And those mistakes are accompanied by feelings of guilt. But I do hope that the mistakes that I make will turn out in such a way that I can learn from them and do better from them. And that's why I wanted to talk about guilt, is trying to do better. And I think that despite mistakes that I feel that I made when my children were growing up, I did the best I could with what I had. And to touch base on with what did I have during those years, I had two major issues. Well, three. I may only mention two, but there were three major issues. The first major issue was my physical health had tanked. I started to have severe arthritis and back problems and had 4 or 5 back surgeries in less than a few years. Major back surgeries. And every back surgery was accompanied by at least a month in rehab, inpatient rehab, and then turning around and also having outpatient rehab. Severe back issues. Along with that, I had severe emotional issues and was suicidal. Attempted suicide on several occasions during those years. And then there was a third issue that I do not want to disclose. But it was a very serious issue and had a serious impact on my mental health. And I think because of those three things, it affected my relationship with my children. And now I see situations that I feel could be very different for the kids. They're not kids, they're all adults, but I think that some things could be different for them if I had given them a better foundation. And so all I can do is to try to have a balanced view of guilt to the degree where I can feel apologetic and prayerfully ask God and my children to forgive me for the mistakes that I made, but not to the point where I let it become my sole focus in my everyday activities. Because as my oldest said to me, "Mommy, you were not abusive. You were the best that you could be." And you know what I said to her? I said, "Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your children's lives." She has three little girls. They are 3, 6, and 8, I believe. 3 beautiful little girls. And I said, "Thank you for allowing me to be part of their lives, because I feel that I wasn't the best parent." But she says that goes without saying. And that's the case with any of my grandkids. The only grandkid there are a couple of grandkids I don't have a relationship with. And it's basically because of distance, where they live and where I live, and what my limitations are regarding being mostly homebound and not being able to jump in the car and go visit them. So it's not due to problems, it's just due to distance. One's living in Rhode Island and the other one's living with a different relative that I don't even know. So those are things beyond my control. But back to the article. The article talks about in the moral woman and the Pharisee. I'm not going to go into that. I just want to get to the bottom of it, of the article. I just go to this paragraph here. Feeling guilty then can be good, even necessary, when we have done something wrong. And then Proverbs 14:9 says, "Fools make light of the guilt that needs atonement." And then the article further states that a guilty conscience can and should move us to confession and other positive action. However, our basic reason for serving Jehovah God should always be not guilt but love. And so having a balanced view of guilt should put us in a good relationship with our Heavenly Father, if that's what we believe in, and that's certainly what I believe in. But it also should help us to have a good relationship to those people that are in our everyday lives. Do we need to go apologize for every little infraction that we made that has given us feelings of guilt, shame, and recrimination? No, because like my oldest said, some things were out of my control. And remember what I said for myself, I had physical and mental issues, but I also had emotional issues based on in something that was going on in my life during those years when my kids were growing up. And all I can do now is to be the best person that Robin can be. You know, like, I'm just trying to get this extra drill, and then I messed this up. I'm just trying to be the best person that I can be. So, to wrap this up, I just want to go back to the Psychology Today to see if there's any difference in what it says here. So I'm going to put my diamond painting pen down for a moment. Bring up this, oh, you can't see it, but there's my other tablet. It looks dark, but it's not. So, how to cope with guilt. I want to finish up with this here. Feeling guilt is a misdeed. After misdeed is normal, can often be remedied by apologizing and taking steps to make up for whatever pain or offense has been caused. Now, what about those of us like me? Why do I feel guilty about everything? It says, though pervasive feelings of guilt are not necessarily a sign of an underlying mental health condition, they can be. So we don't want to have excessive or inappropriate guilt, because it can be a prelude to having a major depressive disorder. And with me having bipolar disorder, guilt comes along with that. So it also makes people, oh, I love this question here. Can you feel guilty for something that isn't your fault? Yes, that guilt complex. Oh my goodness. That's something I have. What are some ways to feel less guilt? Can therapy help you with guilt? And what are some ways to deal with a guilt trip? Those are other questions that I'm not going to go into. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Is my mental health is on an upward rise. It really is. But yet I'm dealing with thinking about the past and certain things that, if I could say take a coloring book and the page was like this and I mess it up by scribbling all over it, and then I take that coloring book and I go to a new page and I can make it just right, that's what I would do with my relationship with my kids. But guess what? I can't. All I can do is be a better person. So if this talk that I've had here has helped anybody, let's just be the best person that we can be. Let's find our relationships that are healthy for us and maintain and nurture those relationships. And for those of us who are people of faith, let's nurture our relationship with our Heavenly Father. So that's all I wanted to talk about while I worked a little bit on Autumn Unbell Mead. And I want to thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.